Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are on the map Spite Reach, playing as the forces of the Skaven against the forces of the Vampire Counts. And this can be a bit of a difficult matchup for the Ratties, but I wanted to give this one a shot with a somewhat unconventional build, and you're going to see that with some of the lord choices and unit choices we've got here. So first and foremost, my lord, and it is none other than good old Ezio Radiatori, or really the Master Assassin. This guy's not a character, at least I see very often. He's pretty awesome. He's got some solid combat stats. He's got, of course, Weeping Blade in melee. He does AP damage bonus for infantry in melee. Solid charge bonus, pretty mobile. Very squishy, but he does have a ranged attack that applies missile damage, or poison damage. Yeah, it does missile damage too. But more importantly, he's got some pretty cool items. He does have Looming Dread, which is a point and click and debuff towards enemies. Reduces their missile resist, their speed, and their melee defense. Makes them much more vulnerable to the range sniping as well as melee sniping, which I figured could be useful here to help snipe out units like dragons or terrorgeists if we see those, or even other enemy characters if they try to get a little aggressive. Besides that, we do have the Rival Hide Talisman. This is the same one you get on a normal assassin. Very nice melee attack debuff. Slippery, which allows this bad boy to escape from some nasty situations. And finally, Concealment Bombs to get that stalk and unspottable, which is really nice. It can help protect your lord in key situations from being sniped out. Now, and of course, this guy does actually have stalk passively. He's not simply a character who can only hide in the woods. So that's pretty nifty in and of itself. Alongside them, we do have a Plague Priest. Now, this bad boy is coming in on his Plague Furnace. Not bad against undead, in my opinion. You can just drain them away over time with that Mortis effect. He's, of course, got his Bound Pestilent Breath, Wither to break enemy armor, because this build I brought is very light on AP damage. And you always want to be wary of Vampire Heavy Cav and Vampire monsters that like dragons and terrorgeists, which have decent armor. Finally, Vermintide as well as Pestilent Birth, just to get some chaff in the field to block up my opponent's approach. Outside of that, the army is very heavy on rats. In fact, we have no large units whatsoever besides the Plague Priest. We do have some Skaven slaves leading the charge here, staggered out around the width of my army, just there to soak up charges and block enemy approach. We do have 3 units of Censer Bearers in the front ranks, including the Regiments of Renown, Blight Scouts, Plague Pack. These guys do provide immunity to psychology and AoE around them. Besides that, they're just beastly in melee and will mulch any ethereal units, which are often a threat to Skaven. Skaven don't have the best counters to ethereal units. They'll just mulch those, no problem. And they will overrun most enemy infantry pretty handily. We also do have a Warp Fire Throwers, 3 units of them, in fact. I was hoping to get some value out of these guys, just see how well we could do against units like Vargulfs or Crypt Horrors or Hex Wraiths or Cairn Wraiths if my opponent would play with an ethereal build. We do have a secondary firing line, 3 units of Night Runner Slings. These guys are non-AP, but they have a lot of missile pressure, and combined with Wither, they can do a lot of damage. Gutter Runners with Poison here in the center, just for the extra snarage, and then 3 units of Rat Spears in the back. And this formation, as you can see, we are pivoting up to this hill, looking to get into the safety of this little mound of rocks, where I can use it to protect or anchor one of my flanks. Now, for my opponent, he has gone with Vampire Counts, as mentioned before, rocking the Lamian Vampire Lord up in the skies here. You don't see her very often, but in my opinion, she's actually one of my favorite vampire lords. She's pretty awesome looking. Just look at that jet black hair and purple dress, just looking really cool. And she's got some cool abilities and cool spell combinations. You get Enfeebling Foe, great for sniping enemy characters. Raise Dead, of course, and Invocation of the Heck. She's got mixed shadows and vampires lore. Lightning Reflexes, great self buff, helps keep her alive in situations where she'd normally die. And then Seduction, which is a massive debuff to nearby enemies, which is very strong, can really debuff an enemy melee blob. And ironically, that's kind of what I have here, especially with the Censer Bearers. Now, besides that, there are 2 Banshees supporting her. Surprisingly, we are not seeing her Scepter of Stability, which provides magic resist. I think that would have been a good choice here to support the Banshees. But both of these ladies do have the Wailing Banner, debuffing leadership by 4, which against Skaven is pretty brutal. Front line is a bunch of zombies looking just to soak up some charges, prevent me from getting top value out of my Censer Bearers. On the flanks, we've got a mix of Black Knights as well as Blood Knights, providing peripheral security. These guys are very strong against Skaven. Black Knights, of course, with their bonus versus infantry, can really mince through the Ratties. And I don't really have the best tools to counter them here. Censer Bearers can do all right, but I don't have too much armor-piercing damage. Finally, a single unit of Crypt Horrors here in the back is supporting a core of Graveguard, 3 units of them, which are quite the threat. Now, obviously, Censer Bearers will mulch Graveguard in a fight 1v1, but if the Graveguard takes on the Skaven Slaves and the Clan Rats and just leaves the Censer Bearers for last, I'm going to be in a bit of a pickle. Regardless, we are going to push forward here, once again anchoring ourselves on this rock, forcing my opponent to try to encircle me, and it's going to be tough for him to get in here. Oftentimes these sorts of outcroppings actually have a larger hitbox or larger footprint than you would expect. So as you can see here, the skin sizes are kind of scrunched up here, and so this is actually all impassable, which is kind of nuts. Now that my opponent is approaching, you can see I left some of my slingers on fire wells. They're going to toss a few pebbles at the Lamian Lord. A few of them toss pebbles here at the zombies, knocking off a few models, so nothing to write home about. In the meantime, Clan Rats shifting flanks. The poor Skaven slaves here soaking the Banshee charge and are immediately going to get charged by this horde of Black Knights, and Black Knights will decimate these guys very, very quickly. In the meantime, Warp Fire Throwers unloading on the zombies, causing some third-degree burns and just destroying these guys pretty effectively, doing a couple thousand damage there very, very quickly. I was trying to push these bad boys forward just to get shots on the Crypt Horrors, but of course that short range is really not doing them any favors, though that single volley there does about 700 or so damage, and you can see more shots there going into the Graveguard, shooting off a couple hundred HP. Well, over here, the Black Knights getting caught out by the Censer Bears as well as the Plague Priest, and really not having a good time. Censer Bears, they are a great weapon unit. They do hit for over 45 weapons or 46 weapons right there, and it's AP. So if you get caught, you're going to have a bad time. Now, Blood Knights here countercharging, and we are going to see a bit of a mosh pit going down as those Knights of Bloodkeep send the Censer Bears flying, encircling the Plague Furnace here and causing quite a bit of damage to it. But we are going to counterattack. We are going to be using the Censer Bears here, just pushing in, smacking down those Blood Knights. Wither is going down, debuffing the armor in this pocket as Plague Winks are summoned from the depths to cause some damage. And if we take an overarching look right now, you can see my opponent is doing a great job of compromising my backline. The Banshee here running straight into the Warp Fire Throwers, and this was just unfortunate. I couldn't get... These guys got a single volley in, did a couple hundred damage. She got it on them, and she's just butchering these bad boys. Over here, Warp Fire Throwers getting overrun, but we are trying to block them off with the Censer Bears. But over here, Censors are going to get on the Banshee, and this is just a horrible spot for her. Zero armor, of course, not the greatest melee defense. These guys on the charge hit for almost 100 damage per hit, and so she is just getting demolished. Leadership tanking, and the Censors are having a field day. Just terrible spot for her. Warp Fire Throwers in the meantime shifting, but over here the Banshee is going in after my poor Lord. The Lamian Lord over here is chasing after the Master Assassin, getting hit with Seduction as well as Enfeebling Foe. Stats in the gutter, though we are doing our very best to escape from this terrifying predicament. And although the Banshees are doing some good work, we are kind of escaping. We've got the Gut Runners providing some support there. Seduction is debuffing them, but it doesn't really matter. They're just able to toss rocks there. Someone does go down Night Runners, but they've got decent combat stats. Nothing to write home about, but decent. And Blood Knights in the meantime getting dragged into the murk here. Down to 28 models, getting wrecked. Over here, the Plague Furnace is going to counterattack, just pushing in, getting a Clan Rat summon, blocking off these ladies. The low mass and the vampires really screwing them over. And the Banshee does not want to be fighting a Plague Priest. He does have fairly high weapon strength. Almost 200, I think, normally. Though right now, Crypt Horrors are nerfing that with their poison. And she doesn't have any armor. She's infantry, so she is vulnerable to that bonus for infantry. And the Plague Priest can wreck a Banshee. In the meantime, you can see we're going to do the Skaven thing here and pop concealment bombs and escape. The Master Assassin fleeing for dear life and squeaking away, no pun intended there, from the engagement, allowing the rest of his brave minions to continue the fight. Blood Knights getting dragged into the murk. Black Knight's overwhelmed, and one of the problems for my opponent right now is that he's got an engagement on all fronts. And that's actually kind of tough for Vampire Guns because healing that is very difficult. He's not able to get the heals in. So, as you can see, one of the Banshees was removed from play by the Plague Winks Censer Bears there. They're just so brutal. The Graveguard are all the way out of position. They're back here. Spears are still way back out in the distance. And although we are having more of them pour in, that's only going to allow the Mortis effect to melt them away, and the Banshee are just getting dragged down by the Plague Priests. My Skirmish is able to escape. The Black Knights getting dragged down. The Blood Knights here withering away. Or actually, the Blood Knights are over here. And they're just getting swarmed by rats. There's just so many rats. Clan Rat Spears here just charging in. And yes, the Knights have racked up 96 kills. They've racked up an impressive tally, but ultimately they will fall. These Black Knights here down to 8 models and crumbling. They will not be able to survive. Over here you can see my Warp Fire Throwers coming back into the fray. I was trying to get some shots into the back of these Graveguard. Melt those troops. Skaven slaves buying time with their lives on the flanks. And although my opponent has successfully removed a lot of my troops, you can see the Graveguard here as well as the Black Knights cleaning up some of these troops. More spears pushing in. And the attrition is kicking in. And my opponent can't get a big old AoE invocation. Heck, he can't really heal here. The Lamian Lord here getting pebbled down. Despite her best efforts, and although she can heal in melee with the hunger, the UI is spazzing out a bit there. And lightning reflex, of course, makes her very beefy. The Plague Priest, in the meantime, is going to be melting these troops, And the Sensor Bear is just wrecking them. Of course, they are debuffing the enemy leadership. And of course, Undead will start crumbling. It's not a huge amount of damage, but over time, those rats are doing their duty, and they will drag these guys down. The Blazecast Plague Pack charging in from the rear, doing quite a bit of damage there. Don't have the most impressive kill counts, but keep in mind, they've often been fighting monstrous troops like Crypt Horrors and whatnot, so doing quite a job there. And if we take an overarching look, we can see balance of power starting to shift decisively in my favor. My opponent's Banshees are gone. Most of his infantry is a very depleted. Zombies really badly whittled down. There is some Graveguard that's still in good shape. We can see a few units of them out here on the flank. But that is it. It's basically the Lord and Graveguard, and everything else here is dying. Like Tabs are probably not going to stick around. They're going to rout here most likely. The Lamian Lord trying to get in. We are actually going to drop a Wither. I didn't want to overcast because I didn't want to hurt myself. And so we're going to try to net her down here and pebble her down. While at the same time, the Sensor Bear is smacking this lady around. And as she is very close to her healing cap, she's not going to last much longer. Gutter Runners here pushing in close, tossing some of those shurikens up into the Lamian Lord. Looming Dread going down, debuffing her as well, making her super vulnerable to damage. Not sundering her armor, granted, but still making her very vulnerable. And the Plague Priest just keeps running away. Despite being slowed down greatly, he still has the mass to push through Graveguard. She does not really have the mass to push through. And so as these enemy elites are whittled down, balance of power is shifting. And there's still quite a lot of pebbles to be flung. Night Runners, a very depleted unit of Night Runners there, as well as the Gutter Runners. And do keep in mind, the Master Assassin is still in the field. He only has 900 HP left. But do keep in mind, he's got that physical resistance, 30% physical resist, solid combat stats. Now, obviously, she can mitigate that with Enfeebling Foe. I don't know how much Winds of Magic my opponent has left. But ultimately, there's just very little the vampires can do, really. And so we're going to fast forward here. There's a little bit of Benny Hill action. You can see I pulled the Sensor Bears away so that they don't fight the Graveguard. Right now, the last thing I need is for my Sensors to get wrecked by the Graveguard. I want to try to pick apart my opponent's top troops one by one. Lightning reflexes here, allowing the lady to escape a little bit better, despite the poison, despite the net snare. But that is going to spell doom for the poor Plague Priest. You can see them warp fire, thrower fire. Wow, look at me. All the big brain speech there, but it is pouring into the Graveguard, doing quite a bit of damage. We're going to drain them a little bit as they're getting smacked with those disgusting Skaven toxins, melting even steel and bone. And although the Plague Furnace will finally be routed and removed from play by the Lamian Lord, it is a little too late. The Lamian is going to get melted there. You can see the Plague Monks, or sorry, the Warfire Throwers actually bursting down their own priest. They don't give a crap. They're here to snipe the Lamian. And as she does take to the skies, looking for a target, going for the Master Assassin there, she's going to find herself getting skewered. Looming Dread smacking her, dropping her speed down to nil. Down to 29 speed there with the poison being applied as well. This is for 30 seconds. All the pebbles in the world raining in. She cannot heal. And even if she could, she's hit healing cap. The rain is just coming in steady and brutal. And really not much can be done at this point. She's going to get melted, not before dropping its last spiteful summon there, but sent toppling from the skies. The Lamian forces are going to be stymied at Spite Reach here by the hordes of Skaven. And you can see we're actually going to disengage from the Graveguard. I'm not really under any obligation to fight them. I'm going to try to regroup, refresh my troops, and pop some Warp Fire Thrower shots at these guys. And unfortunately, and this is kind of disappointing me a little bit, I had hoped that the clumped up Graveguard would be a good target, despite their armor, 2 Warp Fire Throwers. Because, for example, Outrider Grenade Launchers tend to perform very well against well-armored infantry, just as long as they're clumped. These guys didn't really do the job. Like you can see, they're doing some damage. They're definitely shaving off a couple hundred HP on these Graveguard, but not as impressive as I had hoped, for sure. Though the Graveguard now strung out, that fire just knocked over so many models. They're not able to get in. They're getting pincered from all sides. Skaven slaves pouring in, and the Graveguard will not last much longer. Crumbling, coming into effect, and my opponent does GG out. So brutal back and forth, and definitely some Benny Hill action for the Skaven, trying to escape the triple 11s here, interestingly enough. Now, for the build here, I wouldn't say it's the most competitive build necessarily, but I did have fun with Ezio Radiatori, with the Master Assassin. He surprised me. So I will say, he has, don't know how to put it. I will say he has very poor survivability, especially against magic. Had my opponent had, for example, Spirit Leech or Manfred, or especially Gaze of Nagash, he could basically two-shot the Master Assassin. But the guy does have that beautiful debuff, which is really fun. I really liked the Looming Dread. It was really strong for shutting down. Early on, it actually helped slow down one of the Banshees and trap her. Later on, it dealt with the Lami and Vampire Lord very, very nicely, so I was pretty pleased with that. He himself is not terrible at doing some chip damage, and does also have the ability to escape very easily. Can you pop concealment bombs? You run like hell. You saw it that game where he squeaked away and then came back later. And keep in mind, if you're fighting a lower leadership faction, I actually think against Beastmen, for example, he might not be bad, because he does get a -8 leadership ability. He does have the, I believe it's the Icon of the Council, or the Get Raid Council perhaps, and it's -8 leadership AoE, which is really strong. It's in a pretty big AoE as well. So this guy definitely, I think, has his uses. It was a lot of fun to test him out here against the Undead. Plague Priest, of course, did excellent. The summons were great. The Wither was great. He melted a lot of HP off these guys over time, got some kills against Knights, not bad. Skaven Slaves, of course, did as best they could. Surprisingly, they did really well in some cases, crushing zombies probably. It's rare that you're going to see this many kills on either zombies or Skaven Slaves, which kind of sums up the nature of the builds here. Clanite Spears did a really good job. They were not this heavily chevroned up, I believe, or initially, so they actually did a lot of damage to the cav. The Blood Knights, the Black Knights, these guys dragged him into the muck, because the cavalry here was so preoccupied trying to shut down the sensors, the Night Runners, the Warpfire Throwers, that it never really focused on the spears, and the spears just tore them down one by one, and really did a good job. Sensor Bears, of course, great job, hundreds of kills, almost 200 on one unit of them there. Tore down the cheap infantry, tore down the Banshees especially, and then the Crypt Chargers were also really, really good stuff. Plus their high AP, excellent against cav. Night Runners did some decent pebble damage. Honestly, I wasn't super thrilled there, but I wanted to try them out here and see if we could snipe some stuff out. I think my opponent's build was actually pretty good at just countering these guys, because he didn't bring a Vargulf, he didn't bring a Terrorgeist, which I kind of expected we might see, and didn't happen. Warpfire Thrower was disappointed, as mentioned before. Didn't do too hot against infantry, but you know, it was a fun test. I'd probably run fewer of them, maybe just one. Then that could free up some space for more Night Runner slings, and that might be better. And then Gutter Runners did excellent, 93 kills. A lot of that in melee, but helping snare and slow my opponent was good. Now for my opponent's build, I don't necessarily think it's a bad build. I think there's some oddball choices here. I think the Crypt Horrors aren't really necessary. And I think the not choosing a Center of Stability when you bring Lami and Lord with double Banshees is really weird. Because that can basically cut your opponent's damage against your Banshees by half, which is really, really nice. Besides that, I will say that I think the zombies might not be the greatest choice. They're cheap, I get it. They're very spammy. You can just throw them down the pipe. But they also move at 23 speed. And that might seem like a weird gripe, but it slows you down. And when you need to be pushing as fast as you can, and it's tough to push fast with vampire counts, but 27 speed on Graveyard or 28 speed on Graveyard, I forget if they're 27 or 28, is a big difference compared to 23 speed. It matters. It adds up. And the fact that the zombies here were just slowing the entire advance to a crawl, I think was harmful and was not helpful. And I think you're better off just going a little bit heavier on Cav. I'd maybe maybe cut the Crypt Horrors, toss in an extra unit of Blood Knights instead of one of these Black Knights, and then cut these zombies in favor of a handful of skeletons or some hounds or bats or something along those lines, just for more disruption. Because I really just don't think the zombies are that good. But otherwise, well played there. Banshees are not a bad idea in this matchup, I don't think. They can just do a lot of hero sniping, focus out weapons teams, that sort of thing, and are pretty beefy against most Skaven weapon choices in this matchup. Just gotta be careful about sensors, which, get caught by them, you have a bad time. Regardless, well played, Central Scrutinizer. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as usual, leave your thoughts, opinions, comments down below. I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.